All right, welcome to another episode of the 100% Wild Podcast. I'm Mark Kenyon with Wired to Hunt.
I'm Matt Drury with Drury Outdoors.
And we've got a great guest with us today on Skype. Who's that?
We do. So we have somebody that is near and dear to our Drury Outdoors collective hearts because he's a guy, him and his father, that came aboard with us somewhere back in 06, 07, and really instantly shot up to, high in the ranks with us because of the way they produced quality content and, of course, captured big buck footage and just doing it the right way and really clicked with us as far as people go. And that's Jeff Lindsey of the Lindsey Way.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Good, buddy. How are you?
Doing good.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so back in those early days of filming so really, did you guys ever film before you guys started filming for us?
Just turkeys. We filmed a lot of turkey hunts. That's kind of how we got our start, was filming turkeys. But we really didn't start carrying a camera in the tree until we met Mark, and it kind of inspired us to take it out there and capture, doing the same thing we were doing in turkey woods and the deer woods.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Of course, you and your dad, David, were on Dream Season Celebrity. That was the first time that you guys were a cast member of one of our TV shows. You guys won that season with Tim Sylvia. And then from there, you guys joined on Dream Season The Journey. Maybe a year? Was it right after that? Was it the next season?
I think it was two or 3 years later.
Yeah. So, of course, you were on that for 3-4 seasons, and just week in and week out brought the big buck footage. And I think everybody's familiar with what we call David versus Goliath, the hunt for Goliath. And then, of course, David connecting with Baby G. That's like some of the most iconic footage in Drury Outdoors history.
I think it's some of the best footage of anything.
Yeah.
Any deer hunting show out there.
Goliath walking out
just
there.
That. Oh my
huge
gosh.
rack, and because of the snow, it silhouetted him almost. I mean, it's just unbelievable footage. So, of course, every time we show that, on social media or the hunts on YouTube for us, it just every couple weeks or months, it's crazy. It'll go viral again. Like somebody shared it or something, and it catches back on, and it's just such good footage. And it was to this day, it's probably one of the best stories. The original 30-minute story that was on 100% Wild Volume 12, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, it was one of the best stories we ever told. I think Mike Miranda, one of our long-term editors here in the studio, he's the one that edited it. It was just one of those stories that gripped you. It had all the pieces. You guys had the history with them. Of course, some of that history with Baby G dated over to the Mark's side of the fence there. So we almost had this complete story, and it was so entertaining to watch how it all went down. As you look back on that kind of hunt and quest, what are some of the memories that you have from it?
Yeah, it was well documented, starting with Mark, but the thing that makes it so mystical or the magical aura surrounding Goliath is the fact that, David didn't kill him. My dad didn't kill him. Had he killed the deer, and I'm not saying it would just be another 200 because I don't like throwing that around loosely now, but it seems like there's a few killed on video every year now. But had he killed it, yes, it was an awesome animal. But the fact that he didn't get it almost kind of made you pull for him, kind of tugged at your heartstrings. And yes, he killed Baby G, a year later, and the deer scored the same. But, Goliath had the frame. Goliath just had the jaw-dropping footage coming out of the timber, double drop tines. So it seems like everywhere we go, that's the first thing they ask. That's what about Goliath? He still must be sick. And he's over it. I'm convinced my dad's over it. It took probably 5 years, but it doesn't really bother him that bad anymore.
Baby G is definitely something that helps you get over it. I mean, it was, that's one of those deals. I think Dad's probably still, still feeling the Baby G deal because he didn't
shoot, right?
Yeah, he didn't
he was
shoot.
There, but he didn't shoot.
Yeah,
he so close.
Yeah, he was very close. So it was a cool story, and we're glad that you guys were able to share it with our viewers. And it's one of those things that, when you look back through Drury Outdoors, there's a few hunts, Skyscraper, Chiquita, this deal, Dad's 178 there in Iowa, a few that you just always remember, and this will be up there with them for sure.
So how was this past season for you, Jeff?
It was good. We had a good season. It was tough. The more people we talked to this off season, we're realizing how blessed we were because everybody, not really had a down season due to spots they were hunting or deer they were hunting. It was just warm. It was just just abnormally warm everywhere you went. It didn't matter if you were out west elk hunting or late season in the Midwest trying to hunt over crops. It was just a warm fall and winter. So it's what we're dealing with, and but we were blessed to I think we killed something like 23, 24 animals on video. So wow. we feel blessed to have done that, but it's just amazing looking back how warm a fall it was and the struggles everybody had and the new obstacles it presented everyone. It's almost kind of reinvent the wheel. How do you hunt deer late season without hunting them over food or what do you do to get closer to the bedding areas and the rut and stuff? So it was challenging.
Yeah, because the food definitely was not a draw like it usually is.
Yeah, when you've got no snow and it's 45 degrees in late December, that's not quite going to do it for you.
And really, it was green, somewhat. There was some trefoil and stuff like that growing up. I mean, it just wasn't a good typical year.
It was a weird year. Yeah, definitely.
It was weird. I just checked the camera on a farm, a little 100-acre farm I got down the road from the house, and it was one camera, and I think I had 11 or 12 bucks. In March, and here it is, the 22nd or something, but in March there was 12 bucks still carrying both sides on that farm on one camera. Jeez. And this is a farm that doesn't have a lot of high deer density.
I'm going to say that explains why I haven't found many sheds this year.
Sure. Yeah, me too.
Right. You're looking for something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or we're just not good at looking. We're just not good at finding them.
It could be that too, but I like the first explanation.
Everybody always asks for a shed hunting tip, and I always say bring somebody that's good at shed hunting.
Go to Mark's property.
Aaron Bennett, I always take him with me because he literally, we could be standing in the same spot, but he's going to find a shed out of the deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it goes. Well, Jeff, we typically on these episodes, we like to take a listener-submitted question and try to convince our guest to help us answer it. So are you up for that?
I'm ready, man. Come on, throw it at me.
All right. The question of the day is brought to you by Cabela's, the world's foremost outfitter.
All right, just wondering your opinion on decoys. I've got a Primo Scarface in the blow-up missed November. If I were to hunt dark to dark, should I pull those decoys in mid to late morning? Or should I put them back out late in the afternoon, or just let them be all day? What do you say, Jeff? In that, I guess first I'm curious about that specific situation about timing. Would you pull it in the morning? Would you put it up just in the afternoon, or all day?
If I'm going to hunt all day, I'm going to leave the decoy out all day because it can do just as well at first light as it can do at lunchtime or 2 hours before dark. The key is just finding that buck who's in the right mood and who wants to play. That's ironically, talk about our Drury Outdoors history. That I think our first 2 or 3 hunts, our first 3 bow hunts that were ever aired on Drury Outdoors were all with decoys. And to be honest, we haven't had a lot of luck with them since. We haven't used them as much as we should. But if I'm going to use a decoy in the rut, I'm using it all day.
So when you mentioned the rut, but when specifically do you like to use a decoy? What are the conditions or the time of year when you say, yep, now's the time to bring it out?
I like somewhere between that 6th and 10th of November for a decoy. What I found is there are 3 magical days in the whole year, and they're always like right in a row that a decoy just works wonders. And at some time when that buck's being aggressive, it got off that first doe looking for the next one, or just plain wanting to fight. He's got his testosterone up. But the problem with it varies so much year to year due to weather and moon phases, just all kind of things that you don't really know those 3 magical days till it's over. So about the 6th or the 7th, I'll start taking it with me. And if I'm hunting a funnel or a spot where the deer are going to come by me, anyhow, I'm not putting it out because sometimes it can do more harm than good. But if I'm hunting a big field edge or somewhere that I can see a long way and I know I'm going to see some bucks cruising, that's when I throw it out there 20, 30 yards away, kind of quartering it to me. And I like to take off one side of the horns because the buck will always come to the side that doesn't have the antler on it. So that's just the way I've always done it. I learned that a long time ago. I don't remember who that was from, but it's something I've always done.
So you just mentioned it there quickly, but can you reiterate again, what exactly is the setup? You said quarter to you and one antler off. What else are you, how else are you doing things to set it up properly?
Yeah, I'm quartering it to me. And, the biggest thing that people can get busted on a decoy is scent. So I'm all about keeping it outside as much as possible without it fading. When I'm handling it, I put rubber gloves on. I'm putting, buck urine, doe urine, whatever the case may be on the back end of it, and I'm spraying it down with some type of scent concealment that just eliminates any trace of human scent, because that's what'll get you in trouble. But yes, I'm putting it a quarter into me, and just depending on the area, I like to put it on a hill for the most visibility. But I don't like getting it too far out there, because most of the times bucks will come in, they'll come downwind of it, and like I say, I'll usually, if I got a quarter into me with hang on the left and his rack on the front, I'll take off that front right side, so that way that buck will work around if the wind's blowing in my face, and he'll come to that left-hand side of that decoy, and he'll face him, and that's typically what I do. Just take off that right side, and matter of fact, I probably don't even have the right horn or antler still lay on my decoy. It's just the way I do it every time.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll see a deer, if the decoy is working right, where the buck will come up to it, but then he wigs out as soon as he gets close to it. And I always thought maybe it was just the look of it, but maybe it's probably actually the human scent side of it, I guess.
That could be
now
too.
You say that.
Or a little of both.
Yeah.
I've always been told, and I was actually I finally had my first kill over decoy this past year, and this worked out well. I've always been told that you want to have that decoy set up so the wind is blowing from the decoy to you, so that, like you said, that buck's going to want to get downwind of it. But in order to get downwind of it, he has to get in between you and close enough for a shot. While he'll be looking at the decoy, but now you've got that shot without him looking at you. Is that the same type of thing that you do with the wind?
Absolutely. So if you got that decoy 25 yards, you're hoping he's going to give you a 20-yard shot, something like that. But you also got to keep in mind that for video purposes, you're wanting that deer to come in and kind of do something cool with the decoy, because nothing's cooler than a buck knocking over the decoy. Now, if you're not filming, just kill him first chance you get. But a lot of times they'll come in, they'll smell that human scent, or if they just charge him and knock it over and then just plastic or blow up deer going in pieces, he's gone. So you better take your first opportunity. You need to take that shot. That's one thing I've learned, unfortunately, the hard way more times than not.
The last few years, Greg Glessinger, it always amazes me how he's a Drury Outdoors team member, how much success he's had over decoys. And I always think he's crazy, taking them out. And he's had some of the best encounters we've ever had on film. John Williams filming them, real close-up stuff with big, mature bucks that they just, like you said, Jeff, it's the right time. They got them in the right mood, and those decoys just literally lured them in,
You mentioned something, Jeff. You said that in certain situations, a decoy can do more harm than good. Can you elaborate on when's a situation like that where decoy is more harm than good? And then on the alternative side, what's the situation where, a decoy is needed here?
Yeah, I learned that the hard way. I started just kind of putting the decoy out, not necessarily maybe in the rut. As a kid, I was putting it out in October. I was putting it out around Thanksgiving. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just putting it out there wasn't a whole lot of decoys back then. I was actually using like an old Delta McKenzie deer target and just hauling it out to the woods. And then the deer would come out, the does would come out, typically always does, just sit there and blow and stomp and, just make you want to just run an arrow through them every time. So I got where I went about 10 years and I didn't use a decoy. And then they started coming out and everybody had one, and I started using them again and started having a little success. But, I really can't put my finger on exactly when they'll freak out about it. But, you definitely, the only time you can get away with it, in my opinion, is the rut. And, I would love in the near future to have a real mounted decoy. Those real looking decoys, or real mounted decoys, have kind of taken over the turkey world, and people have a lot of success. And I would love, like a little basket rack 8-pointer, a little 6-pointer, something that won't scare all the bucks off, but have him bedded down or just real close. That's something I'd like to work on in the future. It really intrigues me.
Yeah, Mark always seems to have a lot of success with that when he puts the real mount on a boss buck or whatever, and that really seems to lure him in. I mean, that realism, because there's a lot of really good looking decoys out there, honestly, and that look real, and you put a real head on top of it. I mean, it's I would assume for a deer it's nearly impossible to tell the difference, right?
Yeah, at least
You know,
for a while.
Yeah, because I mean they're so honed in on it, anyways. The thing about it though, if you do it like you mentioned, if it's early in the year or late in the year when maybe there's a lot of deer coming to a food source, I mean you have so many opportunities for a doe to just completely screw up that that chance.
Yeah.
Like there's not many times a year where it's really worth doing.
Yeah.
That's right. And in the rut, bucks typically aren't, or a lot of deer aren't typically coming to feed. The does are scared. The bucks are just cruising around. So that's really the only time you can get away with it on food source. A power line or a long field that the deer don't really stay in all day is a great spot to put one in the rut. But if you got a field that 10, 20 deer are hitting every night and you want to go hunt it and take a decoy to it, better be a really big field or else you're just going to blow your chances. There's not a doe that's going to know. Every doe that comes in that field is going to know, hey, this ain't right. And it's just going to be more frustrating than anything.
Yeah. And the reason why you don't see many people putting it in the timber, I mean, they just don't. It doesn't work at all.
Right.
Like if they walk up and all of a sudden there's a deer standing there, it freaks them out.
That's what I was going to say.
Just like a turkey, I guess. You know?
Exactly. I think one of those situations where decoy is dangerous if it's a spot like that, like in the timber. If you surprise a deer with a decoy, I think that's where you're getting issues. Or if you've got the decoy just outside of a thick patch of cover, just above a hill or something, and they come popping out, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a decoy. I think those places are kind of risky. Or, like you mentioned, Jeff, lots of does in the area. I think a perfect situation is if it's like a relatively low deer density and you're in an open area and you're in a spot where not necessarily a lot of deer coming through, but you know that you could see something off in the distance and you could maybe call to one in the distance and bring in that single buck. That seems like a dynamite situation. And that was actually exactly what happened for me this November. And speaking of calling, I'm kind of curious for you, Jeff. How do you incorporate, if at all, calling or rattling or something like that when you're using a decoy?
Yeah, I like to do a lot of grunt and snort wheeze. Snort wheeze to me is the most deadliest call. I just do it with my mouth, but it's the most deadliest call out there, especially when you got a decoy. If I'm rattling, I'm only going to rattle enough to get their attention. And that's no matter if I got a decoy or not. But when that buck turns and looks at me, I'm stopped. I don't want to let him see me moving in the tree. I don't want to attract noise to 20 foot up in the tree. So rattling, grunting, whatever, I'll do it till I get his attention, and at that point I'm counting on the decoy to kind of take over. It's just like, hey, look, I'm over here, you see me. That's when the curiosity needs to kick in for the buck.
Yeah, that makes sense. That seems in line with what most people I've heard do and what I've seen. That was exactly kind of what worked for me. Is I saw this buck coming across, I grunted at him, he didn't seem to hear it, grunt again, didn't seem to hear it, then I snort wheezed. That guy's attention, and as soon as that body language changed, and I saw he was looking at the decoy, he knew it was there, he pinned his ears back, and that's all right. Lay off the grunt and just let him do his thing.
Yeah.
And
he's committed.
Once he's committed, you'll just let him do his thing. I think sometimes people worry that I made him grunt once, and he's looking my way, maybe he starts moving my way, but he hasn't come all the way. People want to keep calling. I think that's usually a mistake.
I'm usually too scared to do that because I think they're looking. Obviously, once you get their attention, they're looking. The only time I'll really continue to keep calling is if I can't get them to. They looked or they stopped. You snort, wheeze, or whatever, and it got their attention, but they didn't fully commit and they keep walking. Usually, that's the only time I feel like I'm desperately, rattling or grunting or,
Yeah.
I would just yell, "Come back!" if I could.
Yeah, they're definitely.
And a lot of times in the rut, I don't care if you have a bullhorn, they're not looking over there.
Yeah.
They're minding on the next doe. They're probably sleep deprived. They probably haven't slept in 3 or 4 days. They're thinking about that next doe, and they could care less about a buck, or they could care less about 2 deer fighting. So it's really tricky on the buck's mood. But if you catch him in the right mood, nothing works better than a decoy.
So I'm curious, Jeff. I know you do some hunting in Georgia too. How does your tactic like this or your strategies like this, how do they differ from when you're hunting in Iowa to when you go somewhere like Georgia? Would you ever even use a decoy or something like this down there? And if so, how's it different, if at all?
Well, in my previous conversations where I was talking about using a decoy back in the day, that's exactly what I was doing, 20 years ago in Georgia as a kid, and trying to, reading these articles about people decoying bucks in the Midwest and stuff like that. Well, my experience, my luck, that does not work in Georgia. Now, like I said, I probably was using a target back then. It probably was shot up and was a color of brown that doesn't exist in the deer world. But so, in Georgia in November, most people are hunting with a rifle. Very few are hunting with a bow and arrow, so you don't really need a decoy when you're hunting them with a rifle. But in the South, I haven't had any success with decoys. Those deer down there are just a little too spooky, a little too scared. I don't know if it's hunting pressure or what, but it's a different type of deer in the Midwest, and they're wanting to fight everything. And I found that as you get out to like a Kansas or a Texas where you have really aggressive deer, decoy strategies are even, well, a lot more documented, coming in, beating them up, and having a lot more success. But, anything, I don't know where you got to go up to, Kentucky, Southern Missouri, something like that, to really start having some luck with decoys. But as far as the South, as bad as I hate to say it, I've had zero luck with them.
Yeah, I think to your point, probably a lot of it has to do with hunting pressure. Because like up by me in Michigan, I wouldn't bring a decoy out if you paid me, probably. Just because I think I think most deer there are just so high strung, and there's so many hunters. There's 1 million hunters in Michigan out there trying all these crazy things, and a bunch of them are putting decoys out and honking and tooting on the grunt calls and stuff.
Everybody's rattling.
Oh yeah, it's just chaos out there.
But I go into the Bass Pro catalog. Oh, that's
exactly. I'll try that.
False buck.
Yeah, but I have heard of a few people, because just this past fall I was dealing with a buck, and we talked about it a lot, where I was having a hard time getting him over onto my side of a property line sometimes, and I had some limits of where I could hunt. And one of these ideas I started thinking about was, should I go do something crazy like a decoy? And I never ended up doing it because I still just didn't think it was worth the risk. But I did end up talking to a couple guys in Michigan who said that they had, on a couple of rare occasions, had some success with it. But I think it depends. It's very circumstantial. And I think in most cases, if you're hunting really heavily pressured places like that, or Pennsylvania, wherever, probably 9 times out of 10 is too risky.
But the other thing to think about there is usually it's not a mature deer herd either that you're hunting. So they're not looking to get into a fight. Yeah, right?
Huge,
your deer, Holyfield, would it be 5 next year, this fall?
I think so.
So, he might actually finally be in the mood to do a little fighting. If he's been there his whole life and he's been the dominant buck for the last couple of years, and then all of a sudden pops this,
possible.
A deer posturing, it might draw him in.
Yeah, that's the big question: is can you get him in that right mood?
Yeah.
And
do you want to risk it?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Is do I want to risk it, or does he see that and say, "I've seen 27 of those, all these other places, all the other yahoos. I'm not going anywhere near that ever again."
Might put a 6-point head on him, right?
Yeah, go real small on that one. Take both horns off.
True. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, decoys are one of those things that seem to be so area dependent and so situation dependent. But when you do have all those stars align, it's pretty awesome.
I've only used them a couple times, and it's just been on the lease because at Dad's place, he never uses them. He rarely calls or rattles, or it just, his deer density is so high. He always says it just doesn't affect him the same way there. And Jeff, you've hunted there before too, and you've seen it firsthand, and it's not quite the same as it was when you had hunted there, but he's had a little bit of EHD and whatnot, but it didn't seem like it affects them the same way there, and it's just a high deer density. They just don't care.
Yeah.
It's like
there's so many deer in every field that I would be worried of just spooking them with a decoy on that farm.
Yeah.
Well, on the decoy front, is there anything else we haven't really covered, Matt or Jeff?
I don't think so. Just scent control. We talked about that earlier. Can't say that enough. Keep that buck or doe, whatever you're using. Everybody has their own opinion on which one they want to use, and it just depends on the time of the rut. But keep it outside. Don't keep that thing in the backseat of your truck or in your garage. Keep it somewhere where it's getting natural airflow, and spray it down with whatever scent elimination product you're using. Sometimes we take ours apart and put them in our scent crusher closet. But whatever you got to do, keep that thing scent free.
One thing we didn't touch on, and it's a decoy, would be something like a Treecoy, whether it's a real tree that you put in, or it's one of these like Flambeau has, or something like that. I mean, that's another decoy. The purpose is still the same. You're trying to draw them to a specific spot in front of you. And what I noticed, I got 2 of them out and on the lease, and all my pictures, I mean, every buck I got hits both of them. Usually it's the middle of the night on these food plots, but they do come to them. It's a fish to structure type of deal. I mean, they will come and hit, especially if you've cut every limb on your field and they got nowhere else to put a scrape. You know, it comes in handy.
You ever use something like that, Jeff?
Yeah, we have. We've used a couple of the Treecoys, and before those came out, we would go around to our box stands and zip tie or wire some big long limbs and hang down and get them a little too close to you doing that strategy. But that's a Treecoy or a tree branch, anything, a mock scrape. That's something that's not going to scare any deer off. So it's kind of foolproof. So if I got a spot, I like to hunt in the rut or even early season, and it's somewhere I know I'm going to hunt more than a handful of times. I'm making scrapes all over that field, anywhere within bow range, because those deer will come visit them.
Yeah.
And it's just one more thing you can possibly put in your favor. If there's a slightly better chance that you can get that deer to come in the spot where you want him to, that can make the difference.
I need all the help I can get.
Yeah, we all can.
Absolutely.
So Jeff, I've got one final question for you. If there was one thing you had to say that you took away from this past season, the 2016 season, one lesson learned or something that was reaffirmed or you were reminded of, whatever the big moral of the 2016 deer hunting season for you was, what do you think that would be?
The biggest thing I would say is like the deer my mother killed at the end of December, MVP. She killed him over in a biologic radish field. And typically, going back to our warm weather this past fall, warm winter conversation, radishes, clover, all those are typically done by Thanksgiving on our farm or in the Midwest. And then you kind of shift over to standing beans, standing corn, turnips, sugar beets, the late season attractants and stuff. But that was the biggest thing I learned, that don't write those off on warm winters. Her deer came out, eating clover, and then came and she actually ended up eating radishes at about 75 yards. And that's something that, the last 10 years, there's no way they would be gone. They would be rotted away, whatever radishes do, and clover goes dormant. But this year, that was the biggest thing I learned. Don't write that stuff off on warm falls or warm winters.
Well, isn't it, I think Mark and Terry always say this. They say green when it's, green and green. When it's warm, you go to green. When it's cold, you go to grain. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so there's a perfect example of that right there.
Absolutely.
Pretty simple.
We had a lot more green this year.
Yeah. And, the deer I killed in Illinois during the shotgun season, I thought, that was beginning of December, the second shotgun season, and you would think that time of year traditionally grain, and we were sitting in a cut cornfield, but sure enough, it was eating this little trefoil that grew up.
Yep.
Excuse me, right there, and it was amongst the corn, but it was hitting that trefoil, so it was hitting green because it was warm, So perfect example.
Yeah, very true. Well, I think with that, we can probably wrap this one up. So, Jeff, thank you.
Excuse me. God, I was about to die there. No. All right.
Well, before Matt keels over here, Jeff, thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. It means a lot.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, and for everyone out there listening or viewing, our usual quick reminder, if you want to listen to the audio version, you can subscribe on iTunes or the podcast app or Stitcher or Google Play. And if you want to send in a question of your own for us to answer on one of these future episodes, you can go to wiredtohunt.com/100. That's the number 100, 100% wild.
As always, you can check us out on the Drury Outdoors YouTube page. The video version of this podcast exists there, as well as all the others. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe. We have constant new content coming out there. DOD TV, Killing in the Kitchen, Throwback Thursdays, all kinds of good stuff. Heck, we probably got, I know we got the David versus Goliath.
Watch that if you haven't.
Yeah, please.
Go and watch that. That's crazy.
It is. So always, you can check us out on DruryOutdoors.com and all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.